So as we wait, Natalia, I just want to thank everyone again for really being a wonderful audience over the past day or so. Those of you who've been here for every panel, those of you who are just here for this panel. And what we'll be working on looking at today is really, or this panel is really a flip side of what we looked at in the first panel. So we're looking at refugee settlement on the ground, and particularly right here in Ottawa, in the Ottawa area. My idea for this roundtable was to have everyone speak for about 8 to 10 minutes initially, so we'll have lots of time for question and answers. And in this case, I just wanted, part of the introduction is really, and the comments, is I didn't want to give many really guidelines for people, just to ask them to talk to what they would like to talk to this audience about. What kinds of things, sort of mixed audience, we have some academics, we have some professionals, we have some students, what kinds of things you would like to tell them, what kinds of things would be interesting for us to know, to start a conversation on the complexity of the settlement questions here. So maybe I'll just start and ask people to introduce themselves. I'll start with this.
Hello. Hi, my name is Zach Nethery. I am co-creator and director of Ukrainian Diaspora Support Canada.
Okay, yes, okay. Yeah, for sure. My name is Olenka Reshitnik-Bastian. I am a volunteer lead of humanitarian fundraising efforts for the Ukrainian Canadian Congress Ottawa office, and I am the curator and organizer of the Майдан Market.
Доброго дня, мене звати Тетяна, я з України, я біженка, буду вам розповідати свою історію.
My name is Tatiana, I'm from Ukraine, and I will tell you my story, how I got from Ukraine to here.
Let's go ahead and start with Zach. So like about 8 to 10 minutes, I'll flag you.
Sure. So yeah, Ukrainian Diaspora Support is the organization that we run. Naturally, that's a mouthful, so we just go by UADSC. It's easier to follow. We originally started the organization to try and help one family, our own. So my fiance is Ukrainian, and when the war broke out, day one, we were trying to get her family out of Ukraine. But we didn't know the logistics on how to do that. So we reached out to resources, we reached out to the community, and we gathered as much as we could. By the time we were at the point where we could actually facilitate their safe travel from, Europe to Canada, we had amassed a lot of resources, be it donations of food, clothing, money, and things like that. And we realized that it's more than we need for ourselves. So we pulled that from our family into the next, into the next, into the next, until we are over 160 now. We do as much as we can, from assisting with the visa application process, vetting and finding host families for them, as well as paying for the airfare when the funding is available. We've raised few $100,000 in the effort to do so. Our entire group is completely volunteer based, including myself and all of the other directors and people who run the organization. Doing the whole thing not from a background of settlements and refugees, we learned a lot along the way, and a lot of it was learned from a lens of, as I mentioned, not really having that background, which means we were able to learn it from a ground up perspective, being able to go around some of the minutiae that can happen during things like this. Crises are extremely complicated. They're very, very difficult. And unfortunately, there are some, places, people, individuals, and organizations that want to have a very simple explanation or a simple answer to an impossibly complicated question. And because we weren't on some level shackled by some of these, rules and things that other entities might have, we could forge it in the way that would be best, in our opinion, for that. And one of the best things that we thought we should go after mainly is safety. Throughout the entire time, we heard horror stories of people showing up at places that were not where they were supposed to be. The host lied, or they showed up and the arrangements weren't livable. and things like that. And we had people who arrived that way and then came to our organization for some sort of intervention, or arrived and the person who went to pick them up at the airport was not who they said they would be. And they said, I don't feel comfortable leaving the airport, but now I have nowhere to go. Safety is paramount for us. So in doing so in our process, we created, with obviously legal help, a legal agreement between host and guest. And it outlines a list of requirements that go through. They're very, very basic. Don't break the law, don't beat each other up in your sleep, or normal things that you should not do. As well as a minimum 90-day requirement from the host to take care of them. Finances have to be on the host. The whole point was that it would give the guests 90 days basically cost-free to be able to settle, get their finances in order, get a job, get on their feet, so that when that 90 days is done, they have a backing to stand up on. Because that was a big thing that we noticed, is that it's expensive. There is a housing shortage, and rent is very, very expensive for Canadians, for immigrants, for refugees, anybody. It's very, very expensive. So we wanted it to be safe, and we wanted to give them ample time to be able to get on their feet. But again, as I mentioned, very, very complicated, very, very difficult, a lot of growing pains and a lot of trial and error to get things right. And we did our very, very best. And I think we've come to a place that is better than when we first started, to be able to do so. And the difficulty now comes with the fatigue of support. And I'm not sure if it was spoken about earlier, but as this drags on, it becomes wearing on the people, be it hosts, be it people who are donating, be it people who are supporting. And we are unfortunately having to spend now a lot of time, and this is why forums like this are fantastic, because we're spending almost more time trying to advertise that there's still a war going on and people still need help, as actually solving the problem. Because, the people who we're helping or supporting are getting worn out. And as, the world keeps spinning, it burns out in the eyes of people. And we're doing our very best to ensure that people fully understand that it's not any better than it was 3 months ago or 5 months ago. And it's probably not going to be any better 3 to 5 months from now. And that this is a long haul journey, and that people need to buckle in, and that there's going to be millions of people who need help and millions of people who still need help, which led into our big problem of money, and that financing is difficult. Everything is expensive, especially right now in airfare, which was sort of the thing that we really, all of our money has gone to airfare, other than, as a registered organization, we have to pay taxes, we have to pay accountants and things like that. But other than obligations, everybody's a volunteer, and all of our money, all of it has gone to airfare, which is very, very expensive. And, you can look at something and say, like, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's fantastic. But when you match it against what airfare costs today, it doesn't go as far as you might think. And we, within, I think, 60 days, we had 2,200 families sign up with us. And even if that's only $1,000 a head, which is very unrealistic, that's an exorbitant amount of money to go through. And as I mentioned, we are still having to remind people, like, hey, that, there's still a war over there. People still need assistance, and be it us or another organization, we always push to let people know that there's still something you can do. And that's another problem that we're having, is that a lot of people are thinking, like, there's just, what can I do? And people have had that since day one, and people have had that a month ago, and people are going to have that 3 months from now, in that, what can I do to help? And it's always find an organization. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be us or whoever it may be to help the thing. We're bringing people over, but let's just say you wanted to help bring medical supplies. There are organizations that do that, or clothing and things like that. And there's always things to do. And we're spending time to, as I mentioned, advertise almost. There's no war still going on, to be able to assist in sort of the best way that you can to further the assistance. I think that's probably it.
Wow, good job. Yeah. I've heard of Zach. He's felt like a bit of a ghost to me. So this is really nice to be here today, Jeff. Thank you to the organizers. Hi. Okay, so I thought my introduction, I'll just kind of introduce myself, kind of my background, and then go into what's happened in my life for the last 7 months and the efforts that we've been putting forward locally here in Ottawa. Like I said, my name's Olenka, and I was born and raised here in Ottawa. My husband and son and I live on the outskirts in Russell, which is a nice little community out there. But I'm a descendant of Ukrainian immigrants. All 4 of my grandparents were from Ukraine. I'm second generation. They had immigrated to Canada post the Second World War. And I grew up in a very consciously Ukrainian household. We did everything from church to Ukrainian school to scouts. My father even worked overseas at the Canadian Embassy as the head trade commissioner for a couple of years with my mother. So I had the opportunity to live there, meet family, experience Ukraine personally, work, travel. And then my involvement here within the settlement community began a week into when the war began. The Ukrainian Canadian Congress, many of you have likely maybe heard of this organization, but I want to just break it down a little bit because it can be a bit confusing. The Ukrainian Canadian Congress has a national office here in Ottawa as well. I am not a part of that office. The national office is a lobbying group. They also advocate education. They're a charity organization that is kind of the father, mother, parent group that oversees / envelops and is the umbrella organization that kind of hosts all these other groups that are volunteer organizations for the most part. So UCC National is its own entity almost. And then there's little groups across Canada that are part of that group that get supported. So for example, in Ottawa, we have the UCC Ottawa affiliate office. That's me, a volunteer. And then Toronto has one, Sudbury, honestly, Victoria, Vancouver, like it's across the country. And we are not a part of that charity status, but rather our own non-for-profit. And some of them aren't even non-for-profit groups. They're just groups that do good work. So I just want to preface that. So I come from the UCC Ottawa affiliate office as a volunteer within the Ukraine crisis response team. They approached me saying, Olenka, can you help us with fundraising and humanitarian stuff? With your background, you'd be perfect. So I came on board and I decided to do a very big, over the top, actually it got a bit out of control, drive for Ukraine through an organization called MEEST, M-E-E-S-T. They're a freight shipping receiving company that specialize in work in Eastern Europe. And they were offering Canadians to help Ukrainians send packages. They had a list going and send it for $2 at your local MEEST location, and we'll ship it overseas and help Ukrainians on the borders who have fled. And also we'll put it by ground into Ukraine and help those people who are in need. That was everything from combat gear, military gear, shelter, protective, first aid, medication, clothing, warm clothes, because this was in March. Oh gosh, so much stuff, comfort stuff, sleeping bags. So food, non-perishable foods. So I took to arms and I did that for the Ottawa community. I was able to get a trucking company on board to ship all this stuff for free to Toronto, straight to the airport, and MEEST would take it and do it. Within 3 days, we had collected over 85,000 pounds of donations. Yeah, it was stressful. And what happened was I was able to send most of that stuff overseas. But by the time I was ready, they said, Olenka, we don't want your clothing. We don't want your food. And we don't want your, hygiene items, because we're so inundated with donations that it's getting lost in the noise. We need the first aid, we need the medication, we need the combat gear, the military gear, the shelter, the protective, the tactical, the stretchers, and we had all of that too. It was amazing. Like we got inundated with stuff, so much so that I had the media say stop giving. So maybe not a really good PR move, but anyhow. And then the next issue occurred. I had to figure out, what am I going to do with 35,000 pounds of stuff that I can't send over? Luckily, in my back pocket, lots of people who donated space. A warehouse is still, to this day, storing a lot of this stuff for me. And I thought, I have to open a store. In the post, although I would say we're still in the COVID era, Facebook groups were really a great way to communicate with newcomers coming from Ukraine. But What was missing here in Ottawa was a physical space that wasn't necessarily a church. Traditionally, in the last waves of Ukrainian, churches were very much at the forefront of doing this, but churches aren't open all the time. I wanted a space to first get rid of this stuff and to support the people that they were initially intended to support, which was Ukrainians. And in this case, it just translated to Ukrainian newcomers coming to the Ottawa region. I wanted the space to be neutral. I didn't want it to be necessarily affiliated to a church where people would come and collect clothing or hygiene and be expected to be in church on Sunday. I wanted it to be safe. I wanted it to become a space where people could volunteer their time. So what did the Maidan Market look like? Well, RioCan Development, which is a huge developer in Canada, donated the space completely at the Westgate Shopping Centre. So we have it for a year. It's still there, and everything's paid for. Rogers Communication came on board too and gave us internet and a phone call, because a lot of the Ukrainians would come and say, do you have internet? I want to call my family. And we had a little coffee area with a beautiful map of Ukraine with numbered pegs, and people could peg where they were from. And then in a notebook, put your name, your number, your email. And then you'd realize that, oh my gosh, someone's from Bucha, someone's from Lviv, someone's from Kyiv, lots of people from Kyiv. But also for us, it was interesting to see what region of Ukraine people are coming from. Since then, we are only open 2 days a week right now, temporarily closed. I'll get to that. But we are open 2 days a week, run primarily by volunteers. Well, actually all by volunteers. And a lot of them were newcomers. I made sure to have 8 people on staff all the time, 4 Ukrainian speaking and 4 non-Ukrainian, because Ottawa has a very philanthropic and just hungry to help, especially when it came to the Ukraine crisis. And so we had on average 16 to 20 people a day who would help on any given day that we were open. But then the other days of the week, you're at the warehouse pulling boxes to make sure to keep up with the needs of these people collecting these items. Since the opening, we've had over 3,000 people come locally. And how do I know that? People register when they come in, and those are 3,000 unique emails to names and addresses to their hosts. So we collect that information to keep them in the know of things that are going on. And then we did a jacket drive for winter jackets, where we were able to address about 500 newcomers in September. And then we had to take a break because volunteer burnout is a thing. And throughout this process, we were also fundraising through the Ottawa Community Foundation. We had a nice partnership with them, and we've fundraised just under $200,000, which has given us the opportunity now to hire 2 people full-time to do this and to help Ukrainians and speak their language and connect them to the services that exist within the settlement community. I heard this a bit earlier, but yes, the settlement community here in Ottawa, the government agencies are inundated. They're over capacity. And we were feeling that struggle because we were having a lot of people come to us asking for housing support, English support, you name it. And to be honest, I couldn't even do it because I was so busy folding baby clothes, and keeping volunteers showing up each day and making sure that we had Ukrainian speaking people. But then as time goes on, the Ukrainian newcomers that were volunteering their time get jobs, and then they leave. And then as the time goes on, people get tired and they don't want to show up anymore for shifts. And then, it influx, outflux when new waves of Ukrainians coming in. So truly not very sustainable. But now we are about to hire 2 people full-time. They're not professional settlement officers, nor are they meant to replace any of our settlement agencies here in Ottawa, but rather be a space still at the Westgate Shopping Centre where people can come and almost be triaged. These 2 people will be professionals, knowing who's connected. They'll be connected with the settlement community, knowing who's offering what service, what's up. If they're doing that 40 hours a week, I feel really good about it. I think that 2 people doing that are going to really bring a benefit to the community, and again, give that physical space for people to come and show up and get connected and speak their language and have all those documents translated for them. I know a lot of these settlement agencies are doing a good job trying to hire people who speak Ukrainian and Russian. But I guess we're just trying to alleviate some of that effort and support that too, because we still feel that there's very much need. Another thing I want to mention, the Maidan was doing things like SIN card registration sessions where we had someone from Service Canada come and a translator, a volunteer translator, helping people even write their name in English. We wonder why people have spelling errors. It's because they don't even know how to spell in English in some cases. And so we had someone there supporting them to do that. We had probably 3 sessions of that, and we had over 60 people get their SIN cards at the Maidan market. They were able to do that remotely. We also offer life coaching sessions, psychotherapists and therapists from Ukraine whose credentials don't carry over here in Canada, but they do life coaching where they sit down and talk to people just about their experience, how things are going, and help them out on a mental load capacity. And that's kind of where we're at. So currently the doors are closed, but they're to reopen in about 2 weeks, not giving away clothing, but rather be more service-based. And I mean, there's so much potential. It's an old physiotherapy clinic with 12 rooms. It's a little bit on the crazy side, but I think that there's potential to do something really great there and to really add to the fabric of the Ukrainian community here, but also hopefully support the settlement community from a Ukrainian standpoint.
So I'd encourage all of you to chat with our guests, and we can follow up this conversation. But thank you to Natalia and Tatiana for sharing their stories of displacement, and thank you, Zach and Olenka, for all the work that you've done. And it sort of just personifies, I think, all the things that we've been talking about the first round. So go ahead, everyone, enjoy lunch, and we'll come back with our panel in the afternoon. We'll come back about 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.